Hi, my name is Carrie Donahue, and I'm Associate Director for Grassroots Advocacy at the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. Welcome to our discussion about navigating insurance denials. I'm happy to introduce IBD patient Ava Hosea and her mom, Sherry Thomas, to talk about their experience.
Hi, my name is Ava Hosea. I'm a 19-year-old IBD patient, and this is my mom / medical manager, Sherry.
Hi.
I was originally diagnosed with ulcerative colitis 4 years ago. Even though the pathology of my illness clearly indicates colitis, getting approval for any medication, procedure, or supply that doesn't clearly fall under colitis protocol is denied. Being denied for medications and supplies has become so commonplace for us that my mother and I are both genuinely startled when there isn't some sort of holdup. There are many things that seem to trigger insurance denials for my medications and supplies. First are step therapy-inspired denials. Our initial experience with insurance denials happened behind the scenes with the selection of my first IBD medications. We had no idea at the time that insurance companies were steering doctors away from more effective medications to minimize their costs. Denials brought on by step therapy protocols required me to try and fail several low-cost IBD medications. Wasting time with these medications worsened my colitis, so by the time I received a more effective but more expensive medication, my disease had become so severe that I required a loop ileostomy surgery. This inadvertently worsened my colitis and my overall health. The colitis inflammation that worsened during this time also resulted in excruciating perianal complications, the inability of surgical wounds to heal in that area, chronic anemia from daily blood loss, and reliance on narcotics for pain. Medications delays caused by insurance denials ultimately resulted in a 7-month hospital stay and complications that still remain unsolved. I'm fairly certain that my time in the hospital, which included 2 surgeries, cost the insurance companies more than a more effective medication would. In addition to step therapy-related challenges, there are several additional areas involving insurance denials that have been problematic for us as well. Second are denials due to annual insurance renewals. Another part of the denials process that has been particularly challenging for us stems from the fact that insurance company annual renewals and carrier charges will ignore a patient's approval history from the previous year. Under my insurance, all patients become new patients again, which may not be problematic for healthy people, but chronically ill patients are affected disproportionately as repeated denials and appeals disrupt critical continuous care and cause undue emotional stress to people already going through physical duress. All the multiple appeals we had to go through initially, all the time and energy spent by both my family and my doctors become meaningless once the new insurance year begins. Each year triggers a series of denials and appeals for medications and supplies I've been using for 4 years. Step therapy protocol also makes an appearance during these denials, as my insurance carrier constantly tries to put me back on the same inexpensive, ineffective medications I first tried 4 years ago. And while new safe step legislation is expected to improve this, the process currently remains time-consuming. I don't know what this looks like for other IBD patients, but for us, the average resolution time for insurance denials has been 5 to 6 months before we can stop making telephone calls and my ongoing orders are correct. Not having consistent access to my needed medications and supplies results in repeated health setbacks and visits to the ER and urgent care. In addition, the stress of this annual ordeal and of having to go without critical medications and supplies for several periods of time per year puts me and my entire family on edge for months on end. When a patient moves their care to a new doctor, all their medical files are sent over to ensure a smooth transition and avoid disruptions in care. It seems like this should also be the standard protocol for insurance companies, but sadly it is not. I think it's important to know that although I am fortunate enough to have a caregiver to help with the cumbersome denials process, there are many young people with IBD whose family members don't have the time or energy to haggle with insurance companies, suppliers, and even doctors who are too busy or understaffed to help with the appeals process. When some of these patients get kicked off their medications and have no help, they are forced to cut out the middleman and go to the ER every time they need their medical infusions. The denials process seems to magically fall away in the hospital. I'm assuming this is so insurance companies can minimize inpatient hospital costs. Some IBD patients who run into repeated challenges with their insurance companies have learned that the only time they have any negotiating power is from a hospital bed. The behavior insurance companies are inadvertently encouraging here obviously represents a lose-lose situation. The patient needlessly suffers and the insurance company loses money. In addition to step therapy and insurance renewal denials, there's an entire subcategory of denials having to do with unique medical needs. My family and I have learned the hard way that the more complex or unusual a patient's needs are, the more painful and time-consuming the insurance process will likely be. This means that some of the sickest people in our country also shoulder the greatest emotional burden of defending their medical needs. Having to deviate from standard product amounts and usage parameters has caused us a lot of headaches. First, product quantities that exceed the standard amount for your medical condition will cause a denial. For example, I put medications or feeding tube into my distal stoma 2 times per day. This requires 2 ostomy pouches per day, which is 60 per month. The insurance-approved quantity for ostomy pouches is only 20 per month. This prescription gets denied every year and has to be appealed several times. I have been shorted ostomy pouches so often that I've had to make them using Ziploc freezer bags and medical tape on more than one occasion. Take my word for it, it's even grosser than it sounds. Second, medical supplies that aren't used in traditional ways will cause a denial. For example, I use feeding tubes and syringes to pump medications into my colon via my distal stoma. The supplier denies these with every monthly order without fail. When we call, we are told insurance has rejected it. It gets kicked out every month because it is only approved in the system for its initially intended use, which is for patients who require enteral feeding. For every monthly order over the last 4 years, my doctor has had to repeatedly send all the supporting documents to appeal it. This year, things got even worse when my insurance company changed my carrier to one that is not an approved vendor for my usual tube supplier. My insurance company offered up an approved medical supplier list, but only one supplier on this list actually carries feeding tubes. This supplier refused to fill my prescription, however, because being in their enteral feeding program is a requirement for being able to place orders from them. My family offered to buy the tubes and was told they could not. My family is now paying out of pocket for feeding tubes from an online supplier, but they are not sterile tubes like those I am accustomed to using, and I'm always worried that they might increase my risk for infection. In addition to disrupting much-needed care, insurance denials for alternative medications and supplies punish medical professionals who think outside the box in terms of finding solutions to improve patient health outcomes. My colorectal surgeon recommended using Urajet as an alternative treatment to help relieve my perianal pain and reduce my narcotic intake. However, because Urajet's primary purpose is to manage urethra pain, my insurance denied it several times. This is another medication that my family ends up paying for out of pocket due to insurance denials and the lengthy appeals process they create. Third, medications that are compounded will also cause a denial. The most effective medication I use is a short-chain fatty acid mixture. It comes in liquid form that I pump into my distal stoma. Because it's a non-pharmaceutical that needs to be compounded, it is often denied and requires a lengthy appeals process. Also, each of the 4 ingredients have to be approved separately, as well as the enema bottles that the mixtures come in. The insurance company constantly tries to apply step therapy protocols to get us to change the individual ingredients to less expensive ones that have nothing to do with the ingredients needed to make short-chain fatty acids. After an appeal, they might approve one of the ingredients but not the others. Once, after several appeals, they finally approved all the ingredients and denied the enema bottle. It is a constant battle. Fourth, when a doctor prescribes 2 or more IBD medications to be used concurrently, new medication add-ons that don't follow step therapy protocol will also cause a denial. When an IBD patient cannot reach remission with one medication, a common strategy doctors will employ is combining 2 or more medications. However, these additional medications must go through the step therapy filter, which requires patients to fail on one less costly, less effective medications first. Even though I've already gone through step therapy to get the most powerful medications I'm on now, the additional medications my doctor wants me to take have been denied because my insurance company told us I need to start with the low-cost medications that didn't work on me way back when this all started. My doctor has been working on this appeal since October. Obviously, everyone's situation is different, and these are just some examples of the challenges we've been experiencing. In all of these examples, hurdles designed to favor insurance companies make it difficult for patients to get back to being well. In my case, the process has resulted in continuous physical setbacks, surgeries, and hospital stays. In addition, the stress brought on by the denials process continues to create undue emotional duress for me and my family. Although the medical challenges might be unique, my experience with the denials process is not. Fellow teenage IBD patients I connect with regularly report similar frustrations and negative health outcomes. Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you, Ava, so much for sharing your story. I'm sorry to hear of the challenges you've had to deal with, and I can't imagine how frustrating this has been for you and your family members, as well as your doctors and medical team as well. So your story really is a powerful one, and I know it will help others to hear about your experience and how you've navigated this process. So thank you again for sharing this with us. Sherry, we know that this doesn't just affect the IBD patient, but the entire family as well, as Ava highlighted throughout her story. As her mom, can you tell us a little bit more about how this affected you or other members of your family?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is if I'm always on the phone going through the multiple appeals processes between insurance, suppliers, the doctors, trying to bring everyone together to make it all happen. I can't be there for Ava. She'll have a clog in her ostomy. I can't be there to help her lavage it. I can't be there for my family, the rest of the family. If we're at the hospital for months on end, I'm not taking care of the rest of the family at the home. And if we can't get coverage on a lot of medications, then it puts an additional financial burden on the family, and that creates stress. So it just seems to create a lot of stressors for the family, and her not being well yet. I mean, it's hard to sleep when your child's not well still after 4 years, and people are just making it harder.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing that. And Ava, we wish you all the best in your continued recovery. I wanted to ask, can you share what you see as the biggest takeaway for other IBD patients who hear your story?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that navigating the current denials process is by design not easy. So patients and their families need to remain vigilant and tenacious to ensure they get what they need, which shouldn't need to be the case, but unfortunately it is.
Well, thank you so much, Ava and Sherry. We really appreciate you both sharing your experience, and we know it will help others. So thank you. We hope those of you who tuned in today found these resources helpful. And thanks again to Takeda and Janssen for supporting today's panel. Please visit our website at crohnscolitisfoundation.org to access some of the resources discussed today. And again, I'll say it one more time, don't forget to join our advocacy network at crohnscolitisfoundation.org/advocacy to be a part of these advocacy efforts. Thank you.